Welcome to Module 5. This module is about power and politics in project management. We know that power is a key aspect in project management. Power relations can explain success in projects, but also power relations can explain failure in projects. This means that the project manager needs to know what power is and how to use it. As you can see here, power and politics in project management belongs to the shaping dimension of the 4S model. And by shaping, I mean shaping people's behavior, influencing people in order to be able to achieve the goals of the project. Power is everywhere. Power is in what we say. Power is in how we say something. Power is on our actions. Power is in the actions we don't do too. And also power is embedded in organizational rules and procedures. There are two views about organizational politics. The first is a popular perception, and the view is that power is negative, that power is a waste of time, is unethical, it is related to dirty tricks, to self-interest and manipulation. The second view is that organizational politics is necessary in order to secure resources, to push ideas, to achieve personal goals, and to achieve the goals of the project. In complex projects, boundaries are redrawn many times, because in complex projects there are new and old partnerships, there are different joint ventures, different subcontractors, we use outsourcings, and all this means that there are many different stakeholders at any time during that project, and those stakeholders have different aims, resources, and agendas. Within this context, political skills are necessary in order to advance the goals of the project and the personal goals of the project manager too. So the argument that we will develop in this unit is that project managers that does not have political skills will fail. Politically skilled project managers are more likely to succeed than naive project managers. Power exists in all organizations at all levels. Power is part of organizational life. This is a realistic view of organizational life, what you can read in this slide. It recognizes that political behavior can be self-serving, political behavior can also be damaging, but also it can help your project, it can be positive, it can help your organization too. Considering the political view of organizations in projects, in this slide you can see an interpretation of how projects are implemented. Please read it on your own time. So what is power and what is politics? We can say that power is the ability to produce intended effects to overcome political resistance. And politics is the ability to get things done your way. That is very important, your way. This means that power can be approached as a resource or as a capacity. And politics is power in action. This means that power depends on the organizational context, but also on the individual's skills, will, credibility, reputation, and position within the organization. Power and politics is a turf game. A turf game is when individuals or groups seek to defend and extend their turf by using either influence and power, status and reputation, or access and control to resources. But remember that political behavior can also be positive. Political behavior can be used to counter the use of legitimate means to non-legitimate ends. The political debate makes explicit all dimensions of an agreement, and that is positive. Political tactics can be used to facilitate the implementation of decisions reached by legitimate ends. This means that project managers need to be able and willing to participate in the political process by pushing specific agendas in order to deal with criticisms and challenges, and in order to cope with resistance, because all projects do have resistance. As you can see in this slide, political behavior is an important skill for an effective project manager. Please read it on your own time. This slide provides additional details regarding what and why of political tactics. Please read it on your own time. In the following set of slides, I will present to you some of the most popular turf game tactics. And the point that I want to make by showing to you those examples is that you need to know, you need to be aware of what are those tactics, and it's not only for you to use them, but also to realize when somebody is trying to use those tactics in order to influence to you. And that is the key point here, because politics is a two-way process. You can try to influence people, but also other people may try to influence you, and you need to be aware of that. Now I will review some of the most popular turf game tactics. And the first one is image building. As you can see in this photograph, the lion has a head who is larger compared with the body in proportion terms. Second, the hair is long, and the idea is that the head looks like bigger than what really it is. And what is the goal of all this? The goal is to look powerful. The goal is to make others to get fear from the lion. The goal is to get respect, and the goal is to be treated differently. And this is all about image building. If you think politicians and famous people use all these tactics all the time. Here we can see an example of image building. Of course, the point is to be seen as successful at all costs, be perceived as acting in the best interest of the organization, and of course, to be always associated with success, with any other people who is successful. This will build your image. The use of selective information is another old turf game tactic. Of course, this means, as we probably all know, withholding unfavorable information from superiors, keeping useful information from your competition, and providing useful interpretations of or data to your superiors, or either excluding others from plans or from activities. And as much as possible, try to control information and release information in a very selective way. This, of course, at some stage will favor your position, and you will have resources in order to obtain something in exchange. Scapegoating probably is one of the oldest turf game tactics. And as we know, it is all about making sure someone else is blamed when things go wrong. And again, you can see this in the political world. In politicians, you see this all the time. But also, of course, happens in organizations. In order to go ahead with your project, probably you will need to do formal alliances. And in political science, alliance, you don't do an alliance with your friends because you don't need to make an alliance with your friends. You need to make alliances with your enemies. And that is the key point. You need to create a coalition, right, in order to gain access to information or to resources to go ahead with your project. And in many cases, you will need to make agreements or alliances with somebody who can be perceived as your enemy. Networking is a fundamental political tactic. You can make a lot of friends who are in influential positions, and you can help them and they can help you at some stage. It's a great investment because you don't need to spend much time to do this. You can do this slowly, piece by piece, over many years. And it is simply a very useful tactic. Compromise is a critical tool of the political behavior, and it is all about giving on important issues to create an ally for subsequent more important issues. So you need to give something in order to have something in return. But the trick here is that political people will give up small things in order to be able to get in return larger, bigger things. Rule manipulation is another tactic that you will see all the time in all organizations in many, many projects. And rule manipulation is simply to bend the rule because you can claim that we are under special conditions, special context, so special circumstances. So this means that we need to adapt the rule to the specific situation. Yes, of course, this makes sense, but also it is a rule manipulation, and in many cases, in some cases, it can help to achieve the goal of the project. This slide provides an extreme example of political behavior. And I am showing to you this slide because it may help to you to realize or to acknowledge when somebody is using political behavior like this in order to influence your project. If that is the case, you also need to use political behavior in order to counter or to react to that influence in order to achieve the goals of the project. But playing political games may involve personal risks. You can advance your project, you can advance your career, but also you can be hurt during the political game. That is why in the next slides I will introduce to you the ideas of Niccolo Machiavelli. Machiavelli illustrates the risks involved in playing political games. In very simple form, he said that any form of change, and we can think of change as a project, because projects involve change, he said that any form of change will have winners and they will be supporting your project. And there will be losers and they will be against your project. 5 centuries ago, he wrote The Prince. In that time, Italy was a set of small cities led by a prince. Usually, Machiavelli is interpreted as negative politics, but this view is wrong. Machiavelli supported the idea of a more pragmatic and contextually adequate actions in order to support the development of a strong state. That is, he was supporting the achievement of a common good, right? So he said that hard work and talent is not enough to be a successful project manager. He said, you need power to be successful. Even if you don't use it, you need it. You need to be involved in the political game. Your choice is between denial or acknowledging the political game and playing the political game, because there's no neutral organization, there's no neutral project. Always you will have winners and losers, always you will have supporters and resistors. Please watch the Machiavelli video that is available in the course site. Please try to develop this exercise and we can discuss it during the workshop and or during the collaborate session. Here you will find the instructions on how to develop this exercise, and the actual Machiavellian personality instrument it is already in Learning at Griffith in the course site. This information will be useful when we discuss this exercise during the workshops or the collaborate sessions. In order to better understand political behavior in projects, we need to understand the cause, the processes, and the effects of organizational politics. We know that evidence confirms that organizational politics can be triggered by either individual or organizational factors. We know that political behavior repertoire is rich and wide, as organizational politics generates dual effects. It can be functional, positive, or can be dysfunctional, negative. And this is what we will see next. The ABC of organizational politics is about why people play political games, how those politics are played in a project, and what are the outcomes of the political games. We know that political behavior is caused by either individual and or contextual aspects. Here on the screen you can see an example of some of these factors that explain the causes of organizational politics. In this screen we can see that there is a wide range of political tactics or behaviors. The most common tactics are building networks, that we all know about that, using key players, befriending power brokers, bending rules, and self-promotion. You will find those tactics all the time, everywhere, in any project. There are other three tactics that are less commonly used, but are not new. For example, using misinformation to confuse, spreading rumors to undermine, or keeping dirty files to blackmail. The point here is that I'm not telling to you to do those things that they look like negative. The point here is that it is important that you need to be aware that this may happen because somebody can try to either blackmail or undermine or confuse you and your project, and you need to know that this is a political tactic and you need to know how to react, how to respond to these aspects. The consequences of political behavior, as I mentioned before, can be functional or dysfunctional. In this screen, you can read some of the functional and dysfunctional outcomes that are individual. In this slide, you can see functional and dysfunctional organizational consequences of using political behavior. In summary, political behavior is always necessary in higher or lower extent. Political behavior is triggered by a combination of individual and contextual factors. Political behavior is not necessarily self-serving because it can be diverse. We know that some social tactics, such as, for example, networking, does not have any ethical impact. Also, political behavior is not necessarily damaging, but it may generate both functional and dysfunctional outcomes, and the consequences can be for both at organizational level, at an individual level. The important point is that we need to be aware that political behavior happens, not only because maybe it can be necessary for us to to go ahead with our project, to support our project, but also it can be necessary to react when somebody is trying to influence the direction of the project using political behavior. Before finalizing, I want to come back to the point of political behavior and complexity in projects. What is the relationship between political behavior and complex projects? In conditions of high uncertainty, when decisions are unstructured, difficult choices are typically resolved by political means. Why? Because in conditions of high uncertainty, rational arguments and empirical evidence may be lacking. Reasons and facts do not fit. Thus, the most significant organizational decisions are the outcome of social and political process, and this is only partially influenced by evidence and rational arguments.